Hi guys, it's the Captain here, and it's that time of year when we start doing silly deals at Andertons again. And this time, I've gone and spent a small fortune buying up a ton of the Line 6 DT50 amplifiers so that I can get them to you with some massive discount. DT50 is a killer amplifier, comes in three sizes, a 112, a 212, and a head with a 412 cabinet. Sounds amazing. We're going to go and plug them in now. Some big discounts on their way to you. So get them while they're hot. You know it's good, and I can't pay my mortgage till they're all gone, so help me out. Let's go. So I'm in the room now with the 3 amps from the DT50 family. We've got the head, we've got a 112 combo, and we've got the 212 combo here. The matching 4x12 that the DT50 head is sitting on top of is a Pro Spec 412 with a couple of Celestion G1290Hs and a couple of Celestion Vintage 30s in it. It's made from 11 ply, you know, sort of poplar construction, very, very chunky. I quite like it. It's a straight looking cabinet but with an angled baffle, so you get the sort of, you know, even if you're standing right in front of it, you're getting a little bit of upward projection. Cool sounding, and that's what you're hearing the head through. So what's the point of DT50? DT50 is a collaborative project between a chap called Reinhard Bogner. If you're not familiar, he's the guy behind Bogner amplifiers, which are some of the sort of the most desirable amplifiers in the world, and the clever chaps at Line 6. It's a hybrid amp, so it's predominantly a tube amplifier, but with some of the modelling technology that Line 6 have done, but just in the preamp stages. So the preamps are a hybrid of modelling and 12AX7 preamp tubes. The power amp is an all tube power section. We're going to hear a couple of my favourite guitarists that I know playing through these amplifiers on the different settings whilst I talk you through the amplifier. That's Alan and Rabir, and I'm just going to talk you through the kind of the features of the amplifier. So I hope you enjoy this video. All of these amplifiers are on incredible discounts at the moment from Andertons, hence the reason we're kind of revisiting these. So you can find out information about that in the description below. So the concept of DT50 is, as a standalone amplifier, it has 4 basic voicings. 1, 2, 3, 4. I love the switches on here. It's kind of, you can see the way the screen lights up, but you push up to go from down through the settings, and down, if you like, to go from 1 to 4. And those settings are classic American clean, which all the things that you would love about perhaps a vintage kind of Fender-y clean type sound. British Crunch, which is number 2, which is over here, which is more reminiscent of a vintage Marshall, if you like, rather than a modern gainy sound. Number 3 is a British chime, which is very much, again, reminiscent of a Voxy kind of tone, a 60s sort of Voxy tone. And then voice number 4 is a modern high gain setting. So just think, you know, highly saturated, probably not different, you know, something more like a modern Bogner or something like that would be. It's very, very simple to use. That's probably one of my favorite features about DT50. It's a 2-channel amplifier, channel A, channel B. You can switch either using this button on the front, or you can switch using just a normal, you know, like amp channel foot switch, or there's some slightly more advanced switching options, which I'll tell you about when we talk about the back of the amplifier. What's very cool is the amp has a kind of a memory, if you like, of its own. So channel A and channel B are not pre-voiced to actually be any different. They're essentially the same set of controls repeated. So drive, bass, middle, treble, presence, reverb and volume. Same again for channel B, so note that you have got different reverbs for each channel and different volumes for each channel. And essentially what happens is, we're on channel A at the moment. If I want to set this to voicing number 1, or I don't know, let's say voicing number 2 or whatever, and then I want to set channel B to voicing number 4, you'll see now, hopefully if you look at this here, as I switch back to A, it remembers I wanted voicing 2, and as I switch back to B, it remembers I want voicing 4. Really couldn't be any simpler than that. Where the knobs are set are not programmable as a standalone amplifier. Again, I'll come into how it can become a programmable amplifier when we look at the back, but as it stands at the moment, it's just like using a normal amp. So if that's how your knobs are set on channel A and that's how your knobs are set on channel B, that's what's going to happen when you recall them. Couple of other cool things on here. We're going into the power section now. So this is a DT50 has 2 EL34s in the power section, and you can, using the switches over this side here, decide whether you want the amp to work in a pentode or a triode mode, and whether or not you want the amp to work in a Class A or Class AB mode. In real quick layman's terms, switching from pentode to triode halves the internal components, if you like, of the valve that are being used. So the pentode uses all sort of 5 components of the EL34, the triode just uses 3. You get a slightly different volume and a slightly different feel as you switch between the two. And Class AB and Class A, again, similar idea. It's about how the valves in the output section are run. Class A, if you imagine a sine wave where you have a positive, you know, and above the line a positive element and a negative element below the line. Class A, the whole sine wave goes through each valve in the output section. Class AB is split so that one valve is doing the positive element and one valve is doing the negative element. In tonal terms, what you will just find is that a Class AB amplifier responds differently to a Class A amplifier. Typically Class AB might go a bit louder, but there is this argument that Class AB kind of sounds a bit more organic. I don't know, you kind of decide, but we'll demonstrate that. And what I really like, again, just like the channel remembers the voice that you want it set to, the channel remembers also the setting that you want it. So if you sort of said, right, I want channel 1 to be a Class AB pentode output mode, so we're just going for maximum kind of headroom, if you like, and that's how I want that's how I want channel A to be. So that's that. We've set it up so that we're on channel A, voicing number 1, Class AB pentode. Okay, but I want channel B to be voice number 3, a much more vintagey kind of sound, so we're going to compress and squash it all down. As you can see now, what will happen is I switch back to A, it remembers voice 1 pentode AB, switch to B, it remembers voice 3 triode Class A. Dead easy, no buttons to press to save anything. As I said, almost semi-intelligent memory. We better have a listen because I've rambled on too long. So let's check out one of our guitar players playing all their favourite sounds on voice number 1. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. Before we move on to showing you what voice number 2 sounds like, I thought I'd talk about the speakers that are in the amplifiers. So the 112 sitting behind me here is actually still a fairly wide-bodied 112, so tons and tons of bass end out of this, despite the fact that it's the most portable of the 3. This uses a single Celestion G12H90. The 212, as you can see, it's only about that much wider than the 112, so there are 2 fairly close together speakers in here. That's using one G12H90 plus a Vintage 30, a Celestion Vintage 30. Quite common again in Pro Spec amplifiers to mix and match speakers, so you get that kind of, you know, the best of both worlds, if you like, the sort of the slightly warmer, spongier Vintage 30 tone with perhaps more of the attack of perhaps a more modern Celestion speaker. And as I mentioned before, the 412 has a pair of each in it, and I believe they're sort of cross mounted, so if you like, that's one pair and that's another pair. And what you can find if you're miking either the 212 or the 412 up, of course, you know, find the speaker that you like the sound of best and mic there, and just remember that. So let's go have a listen to one of our players playing channel, sorry, not channel 2, but voicing number 2. So I've spun the amplifier around now so that we can talk about some of the features on the back of the amplifier. The features on the back of the amps are all identical. So the 1x12 and the 212 have exactly the same panel layout. Starting with the boring bit over here, these amplifiers are all designed to work in a sort of 220 to 240 volt environment. So the ones that Andertons have to sell are fine to be used all across Europe and in Australia, but in America or the Far East, I think you need to buy the 110 volt versions. So over here, the amplifier has gone from being incredibly simple to use on the front to being quite sophisticated when we get around the back. So we have MIDI in and out. So if you're a rack effects user and you want to be able to recall the channels of the DT50 using your rack gear and a MIDI pedal board, you absolutely can do. We have an effects loop with a return level, sorry. So again, you should be able to match regardless of what pedals you're using, even some of the more modern pedals with a very hot kind of output section, you should be able to compensate to make sure that you always get the best quality sound and no sort of unwanted distortion through the effects loop. Here's where some sort of line 6 kind of technology comes in. We have a cabinet simulated direct output. This is brilliant for either when you're playing larger gigs and you just want your amp to be an onstage monitor, but what you actually want the sound man to get is a feed to avoid having to mic up. Or of course, if you just want to record this at home and you just don't want to make any noise, you don't need to mic the cabinet up, you can just come out of here. And if you've, and as I'm sure you're well aware, line 6 makes some of the best emulated guitar sounds that you can buy. Here we have all your different speaker outputs. As I mentioned, this is an 8-ohm cabinet, but all the amps are quite happy to work with anything 4-ohm, 8-ohm, 16-ohm, whatever. So line 6 link. Actually, lastly, let's do the other simple one. Here's your foot switch socket for just doing the AB on the front. Line 6 link. This is where the integration, if you're a pod HD 500 or 500X owner, comes in. You don't have to have an HD 500X to use this amplifier. Let's just make that super clear. It's simply a bit of a bonus, if you like, if you have an HD 500X. So without HD500X, as we've talked before, you have 4 voicings built into the amplifier. Once you plug your HD500 or 500X in, the 500 has a mode, if you like a DT50 mode that you set it in, and then what happens is all of the amp models that are available in the HD500 and 500X, which I think is something like 30 different amp models, replace the 4 basic models that you've got built in to this amplifier. However, what the HD500 does when it's in its DT50 mode is it knows that it doesn't need the power amp and the speaker emulation part of it. So if you like, that's disabled, and the DT50 does the power amp and the speaker side of it, not emulation. Of course, it's the real deal once you're in a DT50. And you have essentially the same simplicity of use as you would have had if you were just using the amp on its own. So you'd plug your HD500 in, you would choose which preamp model that you wanted. The knobs then on the front of the amplifier control the HD500 if you like, or you can, in fact, I believe with the HD500 you can do it the other way around. You can control the knobs on the front of here from the HD500. You then select, do you want your pentode or your triode, your class A or your class AB, and the HD500 will remember that. Now the difference, and I mentioned this before, that the knobs on the front of the amplifier don't, as you're switching between A and B, don't remember where they're, or can't be programmed, if you like, to recall a certain setting. Of course, once you're using the HD500, they can be programmed. So if you want 20 different patches, each with a different EQ and a different gain setting and a different amp model, you can do that with your HD500, which you sort of can't do, if you like, without. So that's Line 6 Link. Very, very cool feature. But let's get some more playing. So now we're going to listen to voicing number 3. One more voice to go, voice number 4, but before we do that, I'm just going to talk about the deal that we've got on these amplifiers. DT50 clearly, as I'm sure you'll agree, is a pro spec guitar amplifier for a pro kind of guitar player, and as you'd imagine, comes with a pro price tag. So these amplifiers have been selling for, well, the cheapest one was the head, which was selling for £1,000. The 112 was about 1,200, and the 212 was about 1,400. But Andertons has just done a big bulk buy deal, as you saw with us messing around in the warehouse. So we bought a lot of these, and we twisted Line 6's arm, and we've done a bit of a deal, and we've got some superb discounts to pass on to you. So if you're thinking the 112 is the one for you, you just want something relatively compact that you can use, small gigs and at home and, in your kind of jam band and stuff, you can pick up the 112 now for $7.99. That's including VAT, including free shipping and interest-free credit. The 212 has come down to $8.99, again, including VAT, including free shipping and including interest-free credit. The head, though, is the monster discount. So the head was £1,000. This has come down to $549. And we've done an extra deal on the cabinet. You may want to buy the cabinet on its own just to run with something else, because this is still a monstrous cabinet at $549. But what we're doing is, if you buy the head and the cab at the same time, we're discounting the whole thing down to $9.99. So it's a massive, massive discount off of what the original selling price of these were. So that's it. That's enough of the deal. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed the playing. I certainly have. Voice number 4 now. Here we go. What we're also going to do what we're also going to do is use some pedals. You've probably seen some pedals being used in this video. I've left that really up to Rabir and Alan to decide what they want to use. But just so you know what they are, it's a TC flashback going through the effects loop. That's a delay pedal, and a TC Spark boost, which is going in the front end, which just provides that little bit of something if you're on a sort of a reasonably driven sound and you just want to give it some. Both these pedals are available from Andertons, and they're great too. So that's it. Let's listen to voice number 4. We'll probably fade out at some point during this playing. I've been the captain. You're amazing. I'll see you next time.